Hello, friends, and welcome to Electronics Labs Insights Conversation. Today, we have with us Mr. Yair Poleg, who is the co-founder and CTO of Ayyeka. Yair has over 2 decades of experience, and before co-founding Ayyeka, he was with the Israeli Defense Forces Elite Intelligence and Cybersecurity Unit H200, where he was responsible for spearheading technological and intelligence innovation. He co-founded Ayyeka in 2011 in Jerusalem, which is bringing the power of AI to the most critical assets. It disrupts traditional constraints on hard infrastructure by integrating AI-embedded edge solution to old infrastructures to bring new intelligence. In short, he's transforming the world through IoT solutions. Today, we will discuss with Yair on how IoT is making a shift in the global lifestyle, governance, and more. So welcome to Electronics Labs Insights Conversation, Yair.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Thank you, Yair. So let us start with understanding about the recent developments in the IoT space and how is it completely revolutionizing, changing the entire administrative sector and the lifestyle of people globally.
Right. So I think in general, we're seeing the IoT technology, the IoT market finally moving from being a hype to real world projects and real world deployments that are really affecting the life of people everywhere. Specifically in the space, that is where Ayyeka is active. We're seeing more and more utilities employing these technologies for better utilizing critical infrastructure like water and wastewater and stuff like that. But also meeting regulatory compliance, for example, for environmental monitoring and air quality and these kind of applications. So all in all, it's really everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So how do you see this impacting the entire administrative department? How is it going to help the administration plan a proper smart city program or say e-waste management or something like that?
Right. So IoT makes managing infrastructure much easier in general, right? Because we have more visibility. So where before you had to send someone to the field to get some reading of some meter somewhere or to make a manual inspection of the infrastructure, now you can get that information right there on the cloud, on the desktop, on the mobile, much more faster. It's available all the time. And also you can switch to predictive maintenance instead of just going and fixing stuff that breaks. So it's really improving the utilization and the efficiency of the public sector on every aspect.
And how is it bringing cost benefit to the administration?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The cost benefit to the administration.
So once you operate more efficiently, for example, if you switch to predictive maintenance instead of maintaining the infrastructure when it breaks, then there is inherent cost efficiencies. That's like on the maintenance side, but also you can find easily better ways to operate your infrastructure and needs, even in the transportation segments, for example. When you have more visibility to the status on the roads and the railroads and stuff like that, you can operate your infrastructure in a better way. Whereas before that, or without this digital technology, you're bound to manual inspections and lack of data, and you cannot make better decisions. You just, you're constrained by your lack of data. IoT really resolves that.
Okay, understand. So what are the other emerging uses of IoT which could be really kind of changing the entire lifestyle of people? Or I'm not just talking on the terms of lifestyle, I'm talking the way of living. It could be healthcare, it could be education. So where are you seeing more of the traction coming from for IoT?
So, my perspective is, of course, from the chair I'm sitting on at Ayyeka as a chief technology officer for a company that is very active in the global infrastructure space. We're seeing many use cases and uses and different implementations and applications. First and foremost, we see, and this is where we are active, we're seeing deployments and applications, for example, for ensuring the drinking water quality in many parts of the world, because this is an issue for many parts of the world. We're seeing cases where people leverage these technologies to increase the crops of agriculture. They call it smart agriculture. Right. This is not exactly what Ayyeka is doing, but it's a very similar application of the same technology to make better yield from the same fields with these kind of technologies. In smart cities, for example, you see applications for smart parking, right? Where billing can start automatically as you park, or you can even get indication where is an available parking spot. So it's almost every sector. Of course, healthcare, for sure, with all these smart medical devices, you can wear a ring that really reports your health to some cloud services, and they monitor your parameters and so on. So really, it's everywhere.
Mhm. And do you think that the governments across the world are actually using IoT to the fullest potential? If not, what could be some of the strategies that they could undertake?
Right. So governments generally they move slow, right? It takes years for a government to actually understand that there is something new and start moving. They don't just pull a credit card like we're used to in the B2B and the SaaS businesses, right? It takes time for them to build all these beads and actually execute on these technologies. The good news is they are already there. It took them, like if you look back 5 years, then really we were really educating the market, trying to get the municipalities and utilities to move in this direction. Now they're full speed ahead. You see that in the US, for example, with this crazy $1.2 trillion bill for infrastructure that they're going to invest. So this is really driving everything forward. It's a lot of market education, but I think as a younger generation gets into the municipalities and the governments, then also the technology moves in with the younger generation of the people and the engineers. They bring, they just bring the new technology with them into these places.
Mhm. Which part of the world do you see the most uses of IoT and which part doesn't use? And how would you compare their performance?
Right, we're seeing, I think, again, this is our perspective. Basically, it's a global, it's a global thing. We have customers in North America, South America, in Asia, and so on. So I would say basically it's everywhere, but it's easier for North America, for example, and Europe to move faster. I think there is like global issues like currency and stuff like that. So for us, as an Israeli company, it's easier for us to operate in these countries because of language barriers and also budgets and all sorts of relationship between the countries and so on. It's a global phenomena. Europe, I think, in terms of like, if I'm looking at Europe and seeing projects that are in the IoT space, before it was called IoT, and also in the US, right? We see that all the time. So other countries, what we're seeing is that they're just skipping a generation, right? They're just skipping to the latest technology on the spot. It's something that also happened on cellular, right? Some countries did not have 2G, so they jumped straight to 3G or 4G, right? We're seeing something similar to that. They just skip a generation. But basically, it's really global. Our traction as a company in the global infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of traction in the US and Europe for now.
What could be some of the challenges when it comes to adopting IoT? I'm not just talking from the perspective of the government, I'm talking about from the perspective of the providers also, the purchasers, the customers also.
I think always the main challenge is to understand that the technology by itself, it doesn't do anything special, right? It's just a means to an end. So you're looking to solve a problem, and if that problem can be solved with this technology, then it's great. And this is part of the shift from a hype to a real world thing. When a technology is just a hype, right? So people try to push it and force it on different applications where actually it might not be needed there. And now this move to real world problems, I think both the customers and the governments understood what this technology can do for them, what it cannot do for them. And there is a better match at this point. So there was a huge challenge in getting this message out to the governments, to the municipalities, to the utilities. Listen, you don't have to do stuff the way you did 50 years ago. You can move forward. Now I feel that this gap is closing slowly. We're still left with all sorts of issues. Purchasing is one thing, regulation is another thing, cybersecurity is a big deal. There are a lot of different challenges, but I think the major obstacle of educating the market, what this technology can do for you, is sort of like behind us at this point.
Behind this, that's nice. You were just speaking about the language barriers and the compliance and policies. Is this kind of a bottleneck right now for the IoT solution providers or the companies? And what could be some of the other global challenges which IoT companies right now faces when it comes to expansion?
So language is one thing. It depends on the company, right? So we are a company of 50 people. So we have to choose where we focus, which parts of the world, what our benefit to that part, and so on. Talking about global challenges, I think number one global challenge right now, everybody talks about it, is component shortages. That's crazy, right? These days, you might have lead times for a battery or for a microcontroller that is more than what you could have a child in that period. It's like over 9 months. It's crazy. So we haven't seen that before. I think this is, I hope this is a temporary thing. That's the estimation at the moment, that this would be resolved in a number of months or maybe a year. But that's probably the number one challenge globally for all the IoT companies right now. And maybe number two is regulation, right? Different areas, and that's another issue and reason why we focus in certain areas. Every country actually has its own regulation when it comes to safety and radio and these issues. And if you and these, certifying your device for a certain, let's say, to operate in Brazil or the US or Korea, each geography requires different certification process, takes a lot of time and effort. So it's better for companies, it's easier for companies to focus on one geography, go through the regulation, certification and everything there, and then just exploit it to the maximum on that market, right? So I think that's one of the largest, the biggest challenges for global IoT companies. And yeah, so we've been there and working on that.
Okay, so looking at the current global crisis that's there, the war between Ukraine and Russia, do you think that it is going to take back the IoT market to years back behind us, or how is it going to negatively and positively impact the IoT solution? Also, how IoT can play a very important role in aligning the, you can say, the construction. After destruction there is construction, so how can that actually help countries align their progress forward?
Right. So first, I think it's too early to know what's going to happen there, right? Russia and Ukraine. The only thing we saw so far is that we provide. We don't only ship devices. We also have our cloud platform, and we also provide the connectivity, the cellular connectivity for our devices. So the only thing we saw so far was some connectivity issues in Ukraine. They were resolved pretty fast. So far so good in that area, as far as we can tell from IoT perspective. Obviously, when rebuilding infrastructure, and we see it everywhere, we see it in Israel, we see it in the US, we see it in South America, we see it in Europe, everywhere. When there is a budget to either improve or build new infrastructure, then some of that budget would always go to improving the technology. And that necessarily means more visibility, more real-time data. And this is exactly IoT. So definitely when there is like a rebuild of infrastructure, rebuild of something, you don't deal with the technologies of 50 years ago. You build with the current technologies, and the current technologies, well, everything is connected, and that's where we are.
How do you see your growth going forward, Yair? How is Ayyeka planning its strategies?
Right. So Ayyeka, looking back, something like 5 years ago, we were focusing a lot on getting data from the field to the decision makers, whether it's using the cloud or using on-premise. We had a huge investment on edge devices and the cloud platform and handling the data. How do you clean the data? Central data could be noisy, so it's a lot of dealing with that, cleaning it and processing it, so decision makers could make better decisions. We also send alerts, so there was a lot of focus on that. Nowadays, we identify the next growth chapter for Ayyeka around more tailor-made applications that involve machine learning and AI. And specifically, we're looking at bringing AI into the edge devices, which is pretty unique. We see a lot of applications for that in the infrastructure space. So that's where we see our value continue to grow. There is like a huge business for actual edge devices collecting the data and bringing the data from the field to the cloud. And there is another business, what do you do with all this data once it's there in the cloud? Okay, so this is our journey so far, and we're seeing a lot of traction in this.
In this space, okay. So when Do you see any kind of, say, talent shortage right now? Yeah, especially when the entire world is now moving to IoT, like you also mentioned, the infrastructure, the healthcare, the education, and all these sectors are going to adopt IoT in a very innovative way. Automobile is another one. Is there a global shortage of talent? And if so, how can this talent be bridged, and how is it actually impacting the companies right now?
There is a well, there is definitely a local shortage in talent, that's for sure. But it's not limited to Israel. We see it in a lot of places. The good thing is, if there is one good thing that we learned from COVID, is that you don't have to come to the office. So even before COVID, we had people working offshore for us. By the way, in India, in Ukraine, in Spain, in Vietnam, like many different places, we had different people working for us on the R&D side and support side. Back then, it was like, yeah, we have that guy over there. Post-COVID, I wouldn't say it's the new normal, but it feels much more natural to have people working for you from remote and completely remote, and it's much better. So I think the solution for whatever shortage there is in human resources is probably look somewhere else, look globally, right? And this is what we're doing. We're seeing a lot of talent coming from places we never thought we'll have people working for us before, and it's just great. So this is how we deal with it, and I know other companies as well. They're just sourcing somewhere else. You don't have to set up an office in Mumbai or in Vietnam somewhere to get the people. They just work remotely, and it's so far so good.
Okay, so yeah, the last question. What is your prediction for the global IoT market?
My prediction is that we're going to see, it's just picking up now. So we're post-market education. We're seeing the beginning, a new project, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg, both in terms of volumes. We're not seeing the huge volumes yet. It's still ahead of us. That's one thing. And also on the side of technology, we're going to see much more machine learning and AI in these fields on the edge devices, on the cloud, and so on. So there is a lot of talk on edge AI and machine learning, but there is not too many products out there right now. So this is still just the tip of the iceberg for that as well. We're also going to see 5G, which is also going to change a lot of things for us. But again, this is a bit, a bit visionary at this point. We're still at 4G now, so yeah.
I think that's kind of an exciting time for the entire IoT industry, especially looking at this technology integration of AI, ML, AR, and 5G, implementation of 5G could bring a lot of potential to the IoT market completely.
It's never boring in this space, that's for sure. There is something always changing, right? So, yeah.